And in today's transmission, we have a lot to get to. I'm going to talk to you about Israel buying TikTok, signed off by our president. I'm also going to get into the recognition of Palestine and a little bit of a correction from my last podcast. I'm also going to tell you about some of the terrible things that Israel has and has not been doing. We're briefly going to dive into the old Tylenol debacle, the conversation there. We're going to talk about some senators, some House of Representatives who have been talking out about Charlie. We're going to talk about Charlie's funeral that happened earlier this week. And lastly, we're going to get into the Epstein files because the Epstein files have been released. So we're going to be talking about all of that in today's transmission. But the first thing that I do want to start off with today is an apology, because in my last kind of like week in review, my last political podcast, I did make a comment about the US and Israel having veto power. Now, to my misunderstanding, the UN, the way the UN is set up, is a little bit more complex than what I had told you guys or what I even knew. So basically, the UN fundamentally has two parts. There's the Security Council and then there's the General Assembly. The Security Council has, I believe, 15 members, and there's 5 permanent members. Now, the 5 permanent members are the US, France, UK, Russia, China, and they have veto power in the Security Council out of all of those members. In the General Assembly, there's over 192. The way that it's broken up, generally speaking, you can think of it as the General Assembly being the legislative branch and then the Security Council being the executive branch, the one who actually provides security, the one who enforces the rules that get voted on. So what happens is what happened in the last one was that the General Assembly voted to recognize Palestine as a state, which they did. I think it was like 142 to 10 to 12 abstaining. And then you have the Security Council, which decided to not invoke those rights. That's where like that veto power comes in. So a little bit of just a nuanced thing, definitely worth diving deeper into if you didn't know about that. But today's podcast, we are going to be talking about some other stuff. And the very first thing that I think we should talk about is Israel buying TikTok. Now, whenever I say Israel buying TikTok, not the government specifically. However, the investors have very deep ties to Israel, namely the number one investor, who is Larry Ellison. Now, if you don't know who Larry Ellison is, he is the CEO of BlackRock. BlackRock is a very nefarious company. It's essentially a hedge fund managing company, but their investments are used to promote ideas that dilute culture. They're a part of buying up single family homes that has skyrocketed the price, which is why millennials in our current system will never be able to own a home, why Gen Z will never be able to own a home. It's a huge reason for the push of the American Congress Party so that we can get home ownership back to our own people and out of the hands of people like Larry Ellison. Because Larry Ellison is also one of the co-founders of Oracle. Now, Oracle is one of the main investors in this TikTok deal. And so what is also raising concerns is that Larry Ellison is one of the largest private donors to the IDF, the Israeli Defense Force, because, well, I told you before, the idea is essentially to destroy the place and then they'll go in and rebuild it, which they kind of already talked about here. Trump talked about it with Trump Gaza. BlackRock would be a huge investor if that happened. So that's a part of the whole nefarious plot that's going over there. But that's not all. I also want to pat myself on the back because in episode 250, which aired March 18th, 2024, so more than a year ago, I called that this was going to happen. I said that this next statement is what would happen. So, in this TikTok deal of China selling it to American investors and foreign investors, namely ones who have ties to pro-Israel, that are pro-Israel, they are transferring the majority of control to a consortium of the U.S. and international investors valued at $14 billion. Back in March of 2024, I told you that TikTok was valued at well over $20 billion, and analysts currently are estimating it at being $30 to $40 billion without the algorithm. So part of this deal, ByteDance keeps the algorithm. But without the algorithm, it's valued at $30 to $40 billion. And so these investors are getting it at $14 billion. So they're getting it for half off, more than half off. I told you this on March 18th, 2024. I told you that this bill, that this enforcement was going to force ByteDance to lose a significant amount of money because of the forced sell-off that was going to occur. We have receipts now. We're starting to get to that point in time that, hate to say it, but told you so. Knew this was going to happen. At the time, I did not call that Israel was going to be the one who bought it. But I guess, hindsight, we could have figured out that that was a big deal. But there's also another caveat in here that is not being discussed, which is that the U.S. will be collecting a multi-billion-dollar, quote, service fee, end quote, from the investors, which makes all of this seem like some sort of scheme, if you will, some sort of, how do you articulate it? Like a, what's the term for it? I feel like there's a term for it. Shakedown. That's a good word. All of this combined makes it seem like a shakedown scheme in order to just take control of the most powerful platform currently, the most powerful social media platform in existence. And I find that to be very disgusting. I think that that's a breach of power. I think that that's something that should not be happening, to say the least. I think it's a disgusting move, and I don't agree with it. I like the idea that I would like the idea if in theory America had control over it so that we could promote American ideals, in theory. But as we can see here, all of this is getting sold out to private investors who do not have do not have a pure-hearted investment in the American people. And so, in a way, the U.S. kind of sold us out on this one. And I think it was a big missed opportunity, in my opinion. But speaking of Israel, let's jump into some of the stuff that's been going on in regards to them in Palestine. First, we have France coming out, the Prime Minister, Macron, saying that he will recognize Palestine as a state, which is huge. UK and Australia officially recognize Palestinian as a state. And it's funny because in response to this, Bibi the bully came out and said that a two-state solution will never happen. It will never be doable. There will never be a Palestine west of the Jordan River, is what he said. And so this proves what my intuition had been telling me all along, that Bibi never wanted a two-state solution. All of these peace deals that were ever put up, we were told Hamas was the one throwing in the, what was it, like, what's the phrase, whenever you self-sabotage? They were the ones who were kind of like not agreeing to it, if you will. That's what we were told by the American media. That's the one we were told by Bibi, is that they weren't operating in good faith. Well, now Bibi the bully is showing his true cards, which is that he doesn't want a two-state solution. He wants to completely take the entire land, which we've kind of already knew that, but this is him finally admitting it. Finally, he tells the truth. And in response to all of this, Giorgia Meloni, who is the Prime Minister of Italy, refused actually to acknowledge Palestine. And this had a crazy repercussion because then Italy started rioting. There are videos coming out and have been out of Rome, Naples, Milan, Florence, Bologna, of all these cities, of massive riots, massive protests going on, all because Giorgia Meloni said that she was not going to recognize Palestine, which I think it tells you all you need to know about the tides and how they're turning in regards to Israel. And I mean, the UN vote was a huge reason to that too. You could see it on that as well. Oh, sorry, we're getting low on battery here. Let's run through this a little quicker. But what's interesting now is we also look at Israel recently also killed 4 United States citizens in Lebanon. And I haven't heard Donald Trump talk about this at all, but he killed 4 United States citizens. They killed three kids and a father, with the wife being taken to critical condition in the hospital, with the wife being critically injured, and she was taken to the hospital. Now, assuming that they pay taxes because they are U.S. citizens, that means that they were funding these missiles. How crazy is that? How sickening is that? Absolute insanity. And with Israel, it doesn't stop there. I mean, you have so much coming out. But luckily, one of the good things, I will say, and hopefully we can get this in there, I want to give Trump some more praise, is that Trump came out and said that he won't allow Israel to annex the West Bank, which nobody is talking about, but Israel is doing a lot of damage in the West Bank right now as well. Trump came out saying, quote, "It's time to stop now," which I think is good. We'll see if he sticks to that tune, and I hope he does, because that would be very powerful for us to hear, for us to see coming forward. Another big issue that we saw coming out as well was that the UK announced digital ID will be mandatory for people to work. Keir Starmer, who's the prime minister, was like, you know what? We know you guys aren't all down with the immigration that we forced on you, that we allowed in. So you know what we're going to do? We'll give you digital ID. You'll have to have a digital ID that will be mandatory for you to work. And guys, this is exactly what they've been planning for the longest time. I think anyone who has eyes could have seen this. It's what they have in China right now, where if you speak out of turn, you say anything that the government doesn't like, they come down and they say, okay, you can't work. Okay, you only get this so many times on a plane. Okay, you can only drive this far. And they slowly take your rights away because all of it is tracked to you specifically. And it's very crazy. But we have some more, and there's a lot I could say on these things, but seeing that my phone is running low, I kind of need to keep moving. So, in speaking of all of this over enforcement, you have Trump sending military to Portland, Oregon, which I'm kind of neutral on. You know, I kind of like the idea if we're truly getting peace and order in these areas. It's hard to know, I think, because the media can cast it two different ways. You have the Fox News saying it's the greatest thing ever. You have CNN saying it's terrible. I personally don't know because I'm not seeing these areas. But if crime is actually coming down because of it, I'm kind of open to it. I think it could be a good idea that what's happening there. Again, these are much more nuanced than I can give you a full breakdown on because I'm running out of time. But I also want to put out there that the Epstein files, we need to talk about those because we cannot lose sight of that. We need those to come out. And more of them have come out. They were released by the House Oversight Committee, which is amazing. And of course, you have a GOP spokesperson saying that this committee, which is accusing them, the Democrats, of cherry picking what information gets released. And I say, maybe, but why don't we just redact the victims and then release it all? Why don't we just do that? Wouldn't that make the most sense? Because some of the information that came out, one of the things that came out, and we'll be seeing who actually covers this, is said, quote, reminder, Elon Musk to island on December 6th. Is this still happening? Question mark. And now this was an apparently scheduled listing for December 6th, 2014. So who knows if that's true? Who knows what's going on there? And then you also have that on November 27th, 2017, that Epstein was scheduled to have a lunch with Peter Thiel, which doesn't surprise any of us. I think the energy of Peter Thiel is wild. I think he's in the club. He's in that club 100%, but that's a whole different side conversation. Then you also have Bannon, who was apparently scheduled to have lunch with Epstein on February 16th, 2019. So a lot of stuff coming out in regards to that. Hopefully we're staying on the ball. We're keeping our eyes on that because that's huge. That it just seems like they're going to keep releasing more and more people, and they should do it quicker. I think they probably do this slow drip so that people kind of get, you get a little bit and then distraction, a little bit distraction, and then eventually it's all out, and you're like, oh, okay, all these people are pedophiles, and what are we going to do about it? So hopefully that comes to light sooner than later. And lastly, the last thing that I do want to discuss is Charlie Kirk's funeral/memorial and how it felt like an absolute RNC rally. Now, a lot of people were pointing out how in the background it was saying that it was the legal group was like Turning Point political. So the political group of Turning Point was running that show. And there's a whole bunch of things. And I do want to be sensitive around this. I'm kind of speaking fast, but I do want to be sensitive in regards that, his wife, his family, they lost a lot. But for you to be at a funeral and pyrotechnics are going off, we have his wife, it kind of feels weird. And it's not just me. I see it all in the comments of how it feels weird, how it seems like it's kind of staged, how it didn't really seem like she was truly sad. I mean, nobody really seemed like they were grieving, and that's fine. Look, I'm not saying that you have to grieve, but just like it was almost like a fake grieving. Like, it's fine if your way of dealing with death is just like, it is what it is. And I completely support that. I try to embody that. That's a whole spiritual conversation on its own. But my point being is that when you're sitting there like acting like you're grieving, that's, in my opinion, whenever it's kind of a weird thing. And I also found it very strange that none of Charlie's immediate family talked. His sister didn't talk, his mom didn't talk, his dad didn't talk. And they're out there selling merchandise, they're rallying people, all of this stuff. And you looked at the memorial, the way that the poster was set up for Charlie's picture wasn't on it at all. I mean, and then, obviously Trump talked about how great he's doing in the economy and how everything's Biden's fault. But to me, it did not feel like it really was there for Charlie. It wasn't really in his memory. To me, it felt more of like an RNC convention. And I would normally keep something like that to myself, but after I've seen the overwhelming comments that are just like, hey, there's something going on here, I feel compelled to tell you how I feel. And I think that I've been blessed with having a voice on the internet. And so I'm going to be, I'll champion that for people, especially if I feel it too. If I feel the same way, I definitely have to champion it. So that's all the craziness that I saw this week. I'm glad that my camera stuck with us. So I appreciate you all. Thank you so much. Remember to comment below what your thoughts are. Am I going too far on all this stuff? Do you think that the funeral was a little interesting as well? Let me know in the comments. But other than that, I hope you had a great week. I know I did. And with all that being said, I appreciate you. I love you. And I will see all of you in the 6th dimension.